What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and Marvel Battle Lines hit me up and asked me to tell you guys about Marvel Battle Lines. Now, this game is an innovative approach to the card battle genre through its dynamic 3x4 board that players will compete on through single-player missions and player versus player matches. Now, the general idea is that by placing and forming a line with your Marvel characters on this board, they'll activate a battle line, which will deal attack damage to your opponent. And when your opponent's life reaches 0, then you basically win. Now, the game itself launches with over 200 unique cards you can collect and build decks of different superheroes and supervillains. And the favorites are all there: Iron Man, Black Panther, Venom, and Squirrel Girl, just to name a few. And the game features an expansive roster of characters that true Marvel enthusiasts would recognize, like Deathlock, Man-Thing, and Gwenpool. So make sure you guys check the link down in the description where you can download the game on the App Store for the iPhone and iPad, and in the Google Store for Android devices. And make sure you guys check to the end of the video for more information about it. Okay, so one of the things that we had talked about in Charles Soule's Daredevil is that Charles Soule never does self-contained stories, right? Charles Soule is never like, here's one story that's an adventure with Daredevil, then here's another story that's totally unrelated and is an adventure with Daredevil. Like, he never does that. Here's one story and then a second story and then a third story, and all of them are related. And it's actually really cool to see that, because what it does is it gives new readers the ability to just kind of jump on with a new trade, with a new story. And while there is a little bit of catching up to do, the story usually keeps them, up to date with what's going on. A lot of writers are really, really good with that. Some are bad with that because it's never their intention to do that. Hickman is a guy who's just like, if you want to read my stories, you better start from the beginning. That's really how it goes. Like Jeff Johns' Green Lantern's like that. Like, you don't jump into Jeff Johns' Green Lantern with like Blackest Night. Like, you read Green Lantern Rebirth, or you read The Last Will and Testament of Hal Jordan, then you read Green Lantern Rebirth, and then you just read 10 years worth of comics. That's pretty much how that goes. Some writers ignore continuity in this entirely. Different writers write different ways, but this is why I love Charles Soule, because with him writing Daredevil, what we do here is we basically pick up with the return of Elektra. Now, Elektra showing up in all new, all different Marvel, it was going to be Daredevil. There's no reason it wasn't going to be. Even if it wasn't like the whole Daredevil Netflix series, Matt Murdock and Elektra go hand in hand. I mean, they're like the 1-2 punch of good guys and villains in the realm of street level heroes in Marvel Comics. I guess Spider-Man's kind of the exception to that, but it's really, really cool to sort of see this unfold. So what we do is we join Daredevil at 2 o'clock in the morning, and of course, he's immediately being assaulted by Elektra. And this is the cool thing, is because Charles Soule doesn't leave it ambiguous. It's not like, Elektra, who is she? Like, is she someone who's dangerous? Like, is she like a legitimate threat? Elektra's like, she's dangerous as hell. There's no other way to put it. She is one of the most capable people when it comes to, being an assassin, when it comes to attacking people, when it comes to overall ability to inflict death and destruction. She's one of the top people that you go to. The funny thing about this, though, is you basically switch back to 9 p.m. earlier in the day. And what we do is we join Matt Murdock in the middle of a courtroom. Now, with Matt Murdock being here, this is just Matt Murdock doing Matt Murdock court stuff, where he's just a lawyer. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, and it doesn't need to be. The reason why is because this does not focus on Matt Murdock in the courtroom. This focuses on Matt Murdock being aware of the fact that Elektra is here. Now, Elektra arriving back in Hell's Kitchen could mean any number of things, and Matt Murdock recognizes this, right? I mean, he's like, well, God, dude, if Elektra is here, then it means, well, one, it means somebody's gonna die. Like, that's just how she rolls. Like, Elektra does not go into a town and leave without killing someone, maybe because she wants to, maybe it's a contract, whatever the case may be. He's like, she's here because she needs something. In addition to this, we also jump to 10 p.m., which of course is following the whole situation in the courtroom with Elektra saying like Matt, let's go have a conversation, basically, her saying, let's go have a sit down. The cool thing about this is that Charles Soule kind of gives us a refresher, right? I mean, for people that were just getting into Daredevil, that were just picking up with all new, all different Marvel, it's not this great, big, huge, grandiose origin story, and it doesn't need to be. It's just Charles Soule saying, hey guys, there was a point where Elektra was basically just the college student. She was a college student. She was a daughter of a wealthy man who also had, criminal ties. This led to her father eventually being killed. Elektra swore a debt of vengeance, joined the cast of Stick, eventually took over leadership of the Hand, but she was also, always fighting Daredevil because she was showing up in Hell's Kitchen, basically enacting her revenge with Daredevil being a superhero. And so because of this, there were instances where Daredevil was willing to look the other way, just because of the fact that there was no stopping Elektra once she set her mind to a mission. But more often than not, he would jump in her way and try to stop her from getting a revenge, just because of the fact that she was essentially a bad guy. But following this, it's basically her sitting down with him, and the two of them kind of, or I guess, Charles Soule sitting down and reminding us that Matt Murdock had done something to wipe the world's minds of the fact that Matt Murdock and Daredevil are the same person, and that Elektra has been impacted by this. And so Elektra does not know that Matt Murdock is Daredevil. Instead, she sees them as two distinctly different people. Now, what she also says is, if you still are in contact with Daredevil, then I need to be able to get in contact with him. I need to meet with him. I have some questions. Now, of course, what Matt Murdock says is, okay, look, I'll arrange a sit down, which brings us up to this whole conflict when they're fighting in the first place. Because where Elektra had led Matt Murdock to believe that this was going to be a discussion between a couple people, that she had a couple questions she needed answers, instead, as soon as he shows up, she's like, what did you do with my daughter? What did you do with my child? And immediately tries to, really tries to beat the ever-loving tar out of him. But this is where Charles Soule kind of messes with us a little bit, right? Because we would look at this and we would say, oh God, here comes another retcon that Elektra had a daughter, so on and so forth. And it's kind of cool to mess with this whole thing, because it's interesting to imagine what the world would be like if Elektra actually did have a daughter. But in the middle of all this, where Daredevil tries to sit her down, and tries to say, hey, look, you have to calm down, he basically appeals to Elektra's knowledge of Daredevil himself. Keep in mind, again, Elektra doesn't know that Matt Murdock is Daredevil, but she's fought Daredevil a multitude of different times. And for the most part, whenever they fought, Daredevil's never given up. I mean, he would fight her to the bitter end, even if it meant that it would cost his life in the process. And so more often than not, it's the love that Elektra has for Matt Murdock back when she knew that he was Daredevil that would cause her to basically, drop her weapons and more or less walk away and say, fine, I'll let you go this time. And it was always, I'll let you go this time. I'll let you walk away this time. I'll let you live this time. It was always that same way, which is one of the reasons why a lot of fans started to get burned out of the whole Elektra dichotomy with Daredevil. But the fact remains here that what Charles Soule does is he has Elektra explain the entire situation. And Elektra explains that she basically has a daughter named Iona, that her daughter, basically just came by way of her having a kid somewhere along the line, becoming pregnant. She doesn't really spill the beans, but the indication here is that it's the child of Matt Murdock. The result is that where Elektra had sought her revenge after her father's death, when she had trained alongside Stick, when she had basically taken over her role in the Hand, throughout all this stuff, when she was training as a student of Stick, that her pregnancy was constantly something that was getting in the way to a degree, to the point that she basically left her child or I guess dropped her child off with a family, let the child be adopted, and then essentially walked away. She would get updates periodically, but the child was never part of her life. And it was interesting because what happens is she hands a phone over to Daredevil and says, this is the information, this is the evidence that I have that you did something with my daughter. So what she says is, take this phone, do what you need to do, but I want answers. And if I don't get answers anytime soon, I'm gonna kill you. And so it's really kind of like a race against the clock. And so what we do is we pick up that morning at 9 a.m. We have Daredevil meeting with Foggy Nelson. And again, the relationship between the two of them is very tenuous, where they were strong friends at one point. Of course, as we explained in our first video on All New, All Different Daredevil, their friendship's nothing like it used to be. Foggy doesn't really trust Matt Murdock the same way he did. But this is kind of the nature of who they are in terms of how they function towards individuals in All New, All Different Marvel. That it's this idea that Charles Soule is messing with. Are they going to stay friends? Are they going to go their own separate ways? Is Foggy Nelson going to walk away from Matt Murdock? It's kind of this ongoing situation of what it is that we're going to end up seeing. But what Foggy does is he tells Daredevil, look, there's nothing to see here. There's nothing on this phone. Like I don't know what it is that she saw, and I don't know what it is that she told you she saw, but she didn't see anything. There's absolutely nothing here. And so because of this, what we do is we follow Daredevil. Well, the questions are being asked, like, what's going on? Why is it that Elektra is so convinced she has a daughter that she has evidence that I had something to do with the vanishing of her daughter when there's no evidence here? Now, of course, Matt Murdock goes back and brings this information to Elektra, and he recognizes how dangerous this is, because it is, right? I mean, it's wildly dangerous. Elektra genuinely believes she has a daughter, and she genuinely believes her daughter's missing. Daredevil walking in and saying, hey, look, like, I hate to be the one to break this to you, but there's no evidence on this phone that you have a daughter. There's no evidence she even exists, and there's no evidence that I had anything to do with it. He's prodding the beast. He's walking up on a bear and just poking it with a stick, because Elektra is just like, so you're telling me that the only evidence that I had of you having something to do with my daughter vanishing has disappeared off the phone that I gave to you. And so Elektra's, from Daredevil's perspective, he's like, oh my God, she's gonna think that I wiped the evidence of my involvement with her kid's kidnapping. And that's the worst case situation, because in his mind, he's like, if she just decides to freak out, she'll probably kill me. And that's true. That's the coolest thing about this, is Elektra is so capable of an assassin that Daredevil literally has to sit down and recognize the fact that if she set her mind to killing him, she would do it. And there'd be almost nothing he can do to stop her, because she's such a capable assassin, a skilled martial artist. I mean, you gotta think, Elektra was basically trained by Stick, the same person that Daredevil was trained by. She's led the Hand, she's died, she's come back to life. She's had all these different instances where she's learned fighting from a multitude of different people, trained all over the world. She's about as deadly as it gets. But what happens is she basically races off to go back and meet with her contact, the person that basically tipped her off to everything everything that was going on in Daredevil in the first place. And this is where the plot thickens, right? Because what happens is Daredevil shows up in the midst of Elektra's conversation with this guy, and this guy in the blue coat, someone just says, "The tangled web we weave." And then Elektra seems to go into a trance, seems to just kind of, you know, dissolve down into a comatose position, or basically it seems to come to the realization of what's happening, that she never actually had a daughter. Instead, she had just been tricked into it. Now, of course, the question is asked is, what's this guy doing here? Why in the heck did he ask this question in the first place? But even Daredevil has his own questions, like, one, who gave her this phone? Who was it that set this whole thing up in the first place? Why is it that somebody is going to such great lengths to basically make it look like Daredevil's a bad guy, to essentially take all of his allies, or even those people who were on again, off again allies, and turn them against Daredevil, effectively turning his life upside down? Who is it that's orchestrating all this stuff? Who is it that's behind it? Well, of course, the question's unanswered, or in this particular volume, it's pretty short. It's only a couple issues, but again, it's really just kind of Charles Soule setting the stage for things to come, telling us that there are much bigger forces at play here, that there's somebody out there sitting in the shadows that's working against Daredevil by literally turning his life upside down and turning upside down the lives of the people that he knows and those individuals that are close to him. But with that being said, guys, if you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about all new, all different Daredevil. I know it's getting some mixed reactions. There are some that absolutely love it, and there are some who are just like, this is boring as shit. Like, it just depends. It depends on where you're coming from. I kind of like it, but again, you also have to recognize that with Charles Soule, he plays the long game by kind of breaking stories up into digestible bites, but it's always just like an ongoing thing. It's always like a huge ongoing story that you just kind of have to read from beginning to end. Now, where this ends, we're not 100% sure, but the fact remains here that it seems like a pretty good run, you know, as far as I'm concerned. But yeah, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end, and I will catch you all later. Peace. Marvel Battle Lines, the game that you can download by clicking the link in the description that will take you to the App Store, where you can download it for the iPhone and the iPad, or where you can go to the Google Play Store and download it for Android devices. This game launches with over 200 unique cards that you can collect and build decks from different superheroes and supervillains. The favorites are pretty much all there: Iron Man, Black Panther, Venom, and Squirrel Girl, just to name a few. And the game features this expansive roster of characters that true Marvel enthusiasts, like myself, would recognize, such as Deathlock, Man-Thing, and Gwenpool. Now, since this is a Marvel product, the game features gorgeous comic quality artwork and stunning visual effects. And the Marvel Battle Lines features a variety of modes, including a single-player campaign with an original story crafted by Marvel writer Alex Irvine, a special ops mode, and challenge modes, and of course, a competitive PvP arena where you can compete against other players to move up the rankings. So make sure you guys check the link down in the description, and I will see you all in the next video. Peace!